There's a version of you that wakes up before you do. Not literally, but in every way that matters. It's already made the decision before your conscious mind even opened its eyes. It picked your posture before you stood up. It decided how you'd react to that first notification. It chose your tone of voice before you said good morning to anyone. And the strange part is, you'll spend the rest of the day thinking you were the one driving. You weren't. Stay with me here, because this is going to feel uncomfortable at first, and then it's going to feel like relief. Think about the last time you snapped at someone over something small. A dish left in the sink. A text that took too long to arrive. In the moment, it felt like a reaction to that specific thing. But if you're honest with yourself, it wasn't really about the dish or the text. Something older was talking. Something that had already decided, long before that moment, what dishes and delayed texts mean. That's the hidden version of you. And it has been running your life a lot longer than you'd like to admit. Here's what nobody tells you about identity. You don't have one single self sitting behind your eyes making calm, rational decisions all day. What you have is more like a committee. A boardroom of competing systems, most of which never speak to each other, and most of which formed their opinions when you were far too young to consent to them. Psychologists sometimes describe this as the difference between your explicit self and your implicit self. Your explicit self is the one you'd introduce at a party. Confident, thoughtful, capable of explaining exactly why you made the choices you made. Your implicit self is quieter. It doesn't explain itself. It just acts and then hands your explicit self a tidy little story afterward, so you never notice the handoff. Imagine a translator standing next to a king who doesn't actually speak the language of his own country. The king makes a gesture, and the translator instantly invents a speech to match it. A speech so smooth and confident that everyone in the room, including the king, believes he meant every word. That translator is your prefrontal cortex, and the gesture it's translating usually comes from somewhere much older and much less articulate. This is where it gets strange. Neuroscientists have found that many of our decisions appear to register in the brain before we're consciously aware of choosing anything at all. Not because the future is predetermined in some mystical way, but because the machinery of decision-making runs mostly beneath the surface. Your conscious mind isn't the author of the moment. It's more like a press secretary, walking out afterward to explain a decision that's already been made backstage. Have you noticed how you can predict your own reactions sometimes before they happen? You already know you'll get irritated if your plans get canceled last minute. You already know you'll go quiet if someone raises their voice. That's not you predicting the future. That's you recognizing a pattern that was written into you a long time ago, one you've simply learned to expect from yourself. But here's what nobody talks about. That pattern has an author, and it usually isn't you. Think back to your childhood home. Not the furniture, not the wallpaper, but the emotional weather of the place. Was it calm or unpredictable? Did affection arrive freely, or did you have to earn it with performance? Did conflict mean danger, or did it mean two people working something out and staying anyway? Whatever you experienced there didn't just become a memory. It became a template. Attachment researchers have spent decades studying how the emotional bonds we form in our earliest years quietly script the relationships we build for the rest of our lives, not because we remember the specific events. Most of us don't, but because the nervous system remembers the feeling, and it uses that feeling as a blueprint for what closeness is supposed to look like. That's why some people flinch away from love that's actually safe, because safety feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. And some people chase after love that's inconsistent, because inconsistency feels like home. Neither of these is a conscious choice. Both are the hidden self, still running the program it learned before you had the language to question it. Now here's the twist that changes everything. You'd think, given all this, that we'd be desperate to update the program, to notice when an old pattern no longer serves us and simply choose differently. But the brain doesn't work that way, and there's a reason, one rooted deep in survival. Your brain's primary job was never to make you happy. It was to keep you alive, and for most of human history, being predictable to yourself was safer than being accurate. A pattern you've already tested, even a painful one, is information your nervous system trusts. A new pattern, no matter how much better it might be, is unknown territory. An unknown territory, to a brain built by evolution, looks a lot like danger. This is why change feels so much harder than logic says it should. You're not just fighting a bad habit. You're fighting a system that interprets familiarity as safety, whether or not that familiarity is actually good for you. Here's where it becomes fascinating. Every time you repeat a pattern, whether it's picking the same kind of relationship, procrastinating the same way, or reacting to stress with the same old defense, your brain isn't punishing you. It's rewarding you. Dopamine isn't only released by pleasure. It's released by prediction, by the small satisfaction of the brain confirming what it already expected. Which means the hidden version of you isn't chasing happiness at all. It's chasing certainty. And certainty, even miserable certainty, can feel oddly good. Think about the last relationship that hurt you, but that you kept returning to anyway. It probably wasn't because you enjoyed the pain. It's because some quiet part of you already knew the shape of that pain. And knowing even something bad can feel safer than not knowing at all. What if the thing you keep calling self-sabotage isn't sabotage at all? What if it's your nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, protecting a familiar identity, even when that identity is quietly working against you? That reframe changes something in you the moment you hear it, because it means you were never broken. You were consistent, painfully, faithfully consistent, to a version of yourself that was built under conditions that no longer exist. Now here's the part that most people never get to. If the hidden self was built by repetition, then it can also be rebuilt by repetition, not by willpower, not by one dramatic decision made in a moment of inspiration. Those moments feel powerful, but they rarely last, because inspiration lives in the explicit mind, the translator, not in the implicit mind, the one actually running the show. Real change happens the same way the original pattern was built, slowly, through small, repeated experiences that teach your nervous system a new definition of safe. This is part of why simply understanding your patterns intellectually so rarely changes them. You can know exactly why you do something and still keep doing it, because knowing lives in one part of the brain and doing lives in another, and the two don't always talk. This is also why real transformation often feels boring from the outside. It isn't a single cinematic breakthrough. It's choosing the calmer response 200 times in a row until your body finally believes it's allowed. It's staying in the room during a hard conversation instead of leaving not once, but enough times that your nervous system quietly updates its expectations. It's proof, delivered again and again, until the hidden self finally revises its own rulebook. Here's something else worth sitting with. The hidden self isn't only shaped by pain. It's shaped by attention. Whatever you gave your focus to consistently, your brain assumed mattered, and it built pathways to make that focus effortless. If you spend years scanning rooms for danger, your brain got remarkably efficient at finding danger, even where there wasn't any. If you spend years scanning for approval, some part of you is still doing that right now, even in this very moment, quietly checking whether this idea is landing the way you hoped. That's not weakness. That's architecture. Your brain simply became excellent at whatever it practiced, without asking whether the practice was good for you. And this is where the deeper meaning starts to surface. Most people spend their whole lives being led around by a version of themselves they've never actually met, reacting the way they reacted last time, wanting what they were trained to want, fearing what once, a very long time ago, was genuinely worth fearing. Not because they're weak-willed, but because nobody ever taught them that the loudest voice in their head isn't always the truest one. It's just the oldest one. Imagine meeting that hidden self, not as an enemy, but as a much younger version of you who did the very best it could with the information available at the time. It built walls because walls once kept you safe. It learned to please people because pleasing people once kept the peace. It learned to expect disappointment because disappointment once arrived so often it seemed foolish not to expect it. That self isn't your opponent. It's the reason you survived long enough to sit here now, aware enough to question it. And that awareness, the simple act of noticing the pattern instead of just living inside it, is the beginning of everything changing. Psychologists sometimes call this the observing self, the part of you capable of stepping back and watching your own reactions instead of being fully consumed by them. It's the difference between being angry and noticing that you're angry, between reacting on autopilot and pausing just long enough to ask, is this actually true right now, or is this an old story replaying itself? That pause is small. It might last only a second, but it's the exact place where the hidden self loses its grip and the real you, the one capable of choosing something new, finally gets a vote. Here's the final perspective shift. You were never fully in control, and that's not a failure. It's simply what it means to be a human nervous system shaped by everything that happened before you were old enough to question it. But control was never really the goal. Awareness was. Because the moment you can see the pattern, you're no longer only the pattern. You become something slightly larger than it. Something capable of watching the old programming run and gently, patiently, writing something different beside it. You are not the voice that reacts first. You are the quiet awareness that notices the voice, and that noticing is the only tool anyone has ever needed to begin again. And if you've ever wondered why some people seem to repeat the exact same relationship with different faces, over and over, as if drawn by something they can't name, that's not coincidence either. That's the next hidden pattern waiting to be understood, one your mind has been protecting even more carefully than this one.